Good morning, Warrior Staff. This is Cindy Nivall. I'm going to be going over briefly the Plan, Do, Study, Act program that we will use this year to bring data and achievement tracking to our classrooms for our students to view. This video will go over some ideas for how to use this in your classroom, as well as expectations for implementation. I want to start by going over what Plan, Do, Study, Act is and what Plan, Do, Study, Act isn't. The purpose and use of Plan, Do, Study, Act in your classrooms is to bring these great discussions you are having in your PLC groups to the classroom to communicate to students what the goal is and where we need to improve for better success and achievement on the STAR test. This is to allow ownership of students for their own progress, to create a little bit of fun and competition between like classes, and for students to be able to interact and reference these sheets to see that learning is taking place for the 6 weeks. Our main focus this year, of course, will be on those SMART goals that you will be creating every 6 weeks in your PLC groups. We need to communicate what these are to the students and how they're doing in reaching those SMART goals. What PDSA is not. It is not an accountability system for teachers. Your administrative team will not be coming in, looking at these charts, and then going over them with you for any type of PDOS evaluation. It is not connected. However, it is expected that they will be used within your classroom. Now, how you use that within your classroom is completely up to you. We're giving you some general outlines and some ideas for this implementation, but you can use it however best suits your room. You get to decide how you want to display it, how it'll function within your classroom, and how you can make this fit your instructional style. We're going to start off by looking at the Plan and Do sheets. The Plan and Do sheets are very, very simple. All they cover is it's just basically a list for students to see what you're going to be doing each week and what assignments they're going to complete. So on the plan sheet, you're going to outline the learning that you will be teaching to students per week of the 6 weeks. This does not have to be a list of standards. Our students do not understand standards specifically. That is for your work within the PLC room. It's also not realistic to list all of our standards here. So you can give general ideas such as teaching culture, teaching government or economy, and so forth. The Do sheet looks exactly like the Plan sheet, except this is where you will list what the students are actually doing to show their learning. A suggestion would be to only list those things that you grade per week, so that students can use this as a reference to know what they have due to you, and you can use it as a reference to remember when everything was done for appropriate assignment of do your work or for corrections on these papers. With these two sheets, since they're so simple, it might be a suggestion that you have a trusted student help you fill these out, or you set aside a specific time to make sure that this is up and posted for students to use for clarification. The next sheet is the study sheet, and this is where we'll actually bring this data to students for them to understand how they're progressing towards their goals. So, at the top, you'll see the classroom progress chart, and then you'll fill in the 6 weeks right there. Across the bottom of this actual bar graph, you see that you have a spot to fill in what periods you actually have classes. For this example, I'm assuming that this teacher has Conference 7th and PLC 8th. Every period then has a spot for you to track in a bar graph style how the students do on every assessment that you give them. Let's say, for example, that this first period class took their first common assessment and they scored on a class average an 85%, so you chart it there. Second period is the same type of class, and you're going to chart that they made a 65%. So then the discussion between those classes would be, what was the difference in our learning? What tripped up second period that didn't trip up first period? Then with the next test that you give, you can go over with students the difference in achievement and see who's doing better and who's not. So First period, second test they took, they scored a 95%. Second period did much better, and they also scored a 95%. So that means that the feedback and the discussions that you had are inspiring better achievement within these classes. All right, going down to the next part of this sheet, you will see that you have a place to list the SMART goals for your class. Now, those of you that have more than one class, like I know Miss Rainsford and Mr. Nivall, they have 3 preps each. You'll have to use this space wisely or figure out something that works for you to be able to actually list what the SMART goals. If you would prefer just to show the SMART goals that you and your PLC group create on the bulletin board with these or under the Elmo doc, that is just fine. But I have put a spot on there for you to list that so you can reference the SMART goal frequently. Everyone needs to be referencing these frequently. Then at the bottom, there's a spot for you to track how students are doing on the SMART goal. I've started off very, very simplistic with this. Blank out of blank students mastered the SMART goal. And of course, you would be tracking that in your PLC groups. If you need to change this to meet your SMART goal or the needs of your students, you are welcome to do that. This, of course, is just a suggestion. All right, you get to make this work for your classroom. If you need to modify anything, please feel free to do so, but be sure that this is a system that the kids understand. This will be used, once again, to track all the progress of students on their common assessments that you and your PLC group give. This does not include any district assessments, and it does not include any semester exams. The last sheet is the ACT sheet, and this is my favorite one of all 4. The ACT sheet is a tool that allows you to receive feedback from your students regarding their learning. I would see this being used several times throughout the course of the 6 weeks so that you can adjust your instruction to meet students' needs. So I filled in an example here for you to see how this may work. Basically, it's a plus delta chart that allows students to tell you what they understand well and what they're still confused about. The current setup is for you to use this at least once every time you give a common assessment. A suggestion would be to do that before you begin your review so that then you can focus your review accordingly. So, set this up for Mr. Nivall's class. The students, he drew this on the board, the whiteboard, as a plus delta chart, and the kiddos went and put post-it notes up saying what they understood well and what they didn't. Whenever he collected all that data, before the first common assessment, he understands that working with equations to solve for x, the kids are very comfortable with, but what they still have questions about is order of operations. So then he would adjust his instruction accordingly to make sure that he covers order of operations again. Some other ideas to use this, if you don't want to do the whiteboard idea with post-it notes, you can just have kids raise their hand and have an open response type of discussion with your students. I encourage you to try to get a response from every student to be sure that we're getting good feedback. You can also use Kagan activities or making thinking visible strategies that we talked about last week to make the thinking apparent and be sure that students are all giving input regarding these, what they understand and what they don't. You can also use technologies such as polleverywhere.com and the response systems that can be checked out of the library for students to tell you what they understand and what they don't. All right, so some ideas for displaying this. Whenever we talked about this initially, we had said that we were going to make posters for you to display these in your classrooms and that they would be a big bulletin board. Upon reflection and getting feedback from some other teachers, there was some great suggestions regarding having these just printed on regular printer size paper to be displayed under the document camera and then hung up on the wall for students to be able to reference easily. This will take up less space for you, and if you have more than one prep and decide to do different sets of Plan, Do, Study, Act per prep, then this would be a little bit easier for implementation. Another idea thanks Miss Chrissy Kelton for this idea, was to use clipboards and hang those clipboards on the wall so then you could clip up easily all the different Plan, Do, Study Acts that you may have if you have more than one prep. If you don't, it's just an easy display for you to grab off the wall, put under the document camera, discuss with your students, and then easily put back on the wall. At the end of each 6 weeks, you will receive new Plan, Do, Study Act documents from me. I will put those in your box. The ones that you used for the 6 weeks that just ended, you will need to take those down and you will need to file them away for documentation and reflection for your instruction for next year. These are some ideas to help you get this going. We would ask that you have this up and you begin those steps for using this with your students by the end of the 2nd week of school. If you have any concerns or questions, please feel free to come and talk to me, talk to Shannon, talk to Mike, talk to Ryan. We'll be glad to talk to you about how to use this in your classroom. We're not asking for this to be perfect. We would just ask for feedback and an effort to use this with your kiddos. We are listening to any concerns or questions that you have, and we'll adjust appropriately as we go through this process. Remember that your attitude and outlook has an impact on the staff and students around you, and that we're just doing things that are best for kids here and taking what we've been doing in PLCs into our classrooms to give our own students ownership of their own learning. Thank you so much. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I look forward to working with you this year.